Hello, everyone, and welcome into NASCAR.com Studio 3. I'm Jonathan Merryman here with Kim Coon and a very special guest, Marty Smith. Marty, how you doing today?
I'm awesome, man. It's voting day.
It's voting day for the NASCAR
It's always fun.
Hall of Fame. We'll put 5 new members into the class of 2019. Ahead of this thing, Marty, I know you're a huge Davey Allison fan. We've had multiple discussions about Davey. So before we get into the heated debate, we have a Davey Allison pre-roll video. Take a look.
Davey Allison had speed in his blood. The son of Hall of Fame driver Bobby Allison, Davey was a natural at the family business. The younger Allison honed his skills at tracks across the South before getting his premier series break in 1987. That season was a standout for any driver, much less a rookie, with 2 wins, 5 poles, and 9 top 5s, winning Allison Rookie of the Year honors. In just 191 career starts, Allison won 19 races and 14 poles, including the 1992 Daytona 500.
Yes! We've done it!
That season was his best, coming just shy of winning the championship after an untimely wreck in the last race at Atlanta. Allison was a fan favorite. His warm personality and electrifying style behind the wheel attracted countless admirers. He often showed heart, grit, and determination, returning to racing after several dramatic crashes, losing neither his skill nor his smile. Despite winning his own Daytona 500, Allison's favorite racing moment was finishing second to his father in the 1988 Great American Race, being the only father-son combo to finish 1-2 in NASCAR's biggest event.
Well, you know, when I was a little kid, I always dreamed about racing with my dad and having a 1-2 finish, but I wanted him to be second.
Though he lost his life in a tragic helicopter accident in 1993, Davey Allison left behind a legacy of speed and success that did the Allison name proud.
Obviously, Davey Allison gone too soon, but what's noteworthy to me is what he was able to accomplish in his short career.
Way too soon. He was my hero growing up, and I was completely devastated when he died. He is why I became a NASCAR fan. He's why I'm so passionate about it even now. And he did accomplish so much in such a short increment of time that he's going to get in. Will it be this year? I don't know. And I've had that debate back and forth with my friends. Do you look at sheer numbers, or do you look at percentages, or do you look at potential? Because we gauge a lot of things on potential. And my opinion of his potential was certainly champion, 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 champion. And most of us regard Dale Earnhardt in that top 2 or 3 of all time, if not the greatest of all time. And it's interesting to consider what might have happened on Dale's resume had guys like Tim Richmond and Davey and Allen and those guys not passed way too early. But Davey is going to have my vote until he's in, so that's pretty easy for me.
So you mentioned debate with friends. We were talking. Who were you texting with this morning about
debating? I took a red-eye home from Phoenix last night, and I landed about 6 o'clock this morning, and from about 7:30 on, I had a spirited text debate with Dale Jr. about who was on my ballot, who I was thinking about voting for, how stupid I was that I was going to vote for some of those people at this point. And it's interesting because we have differing philosophies on what resonates the most and how resumes and accomplishments should be gauged. And I love his perspective. He, to me, is the ultimate historian in this sport. He's so passionate about it. He studies it. Even when he's not bored, I mean, he'll sit around and watch the 1967 Tyson Holly Farms 500 just for fun because it's what he loves to do. And I will say that his perspective did sway mine a bit and make me look at my vote today a little bit differently. I will say this to close that. Our definitions on what longevity means are not one and the same, and mine is right.
Let's talk about legacy, drivers leaving
Sure.
legacies. Are you one that looks strictly or mostly at stats, or do you consider, you know, what they've done for the greater good of the sport?
Stats certainly matter. I mean, our sport, we care about stats, but I like to look at context. I like to look at overall contributions and how they impacted the community within the sport and maybe grew the sport outside. I've been joking ever since I walked in the door, man, it's going to be real hard for Jeff Gordon today. I don't think, it's going to be tough for Jeff to get that vote from everybody. His impact on the sport may be unprecedented. I know that Richard Petty's is awesome because he was so fan-friendly, but Jeff exploded this thing into the mainstream and made people pay attention who never had, and brought the periphery into the avid consumer base. So, yes, I try to look at all of that. Now, Jeff's resume is not bad either, but all of those things are very important to me. It's like back to Junior. You know, Junior is the most self-deprecating and won't give himself any credit. And he's like, I don't know, you know, should I be in? I'd probably have this opinion about myself. Well, his impact on the sport, okay, 2 Daytona 500 champions, 2 Busch championships, on and on. But outside the walls, his impact is maybe, it's beyond comprehension. It's beyond description. So it'll be fun when he's on this ballot to have that debate.
Well, we appreciate your time. We know you're a busy guy, flying all around the world now. But while we let Marty go, we're going to let you take a look at a video about Jeff Gordon and his legacy getting into the Hall of Fame possibly today.
A rare mix of youth, charisma, and talent, Jeff Gordon took the NASCAR Premier Series by storm with his arrival in the 90s. In 1994, his first career win in the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte helped set the stage for one of the most electrifying triumphs in NASCAR history at the inaugural Brickyard 400 later that year.
We'll remember the name, Jeff Gordon, winner of the inaugural Brickyard 400.
In the 4-year span from 1995 to 1998, Gordon won 3 Premier Series titles and 40 races, including a modern-era record-tying 13 in 1998. He won his 4th championship in 2001 and is one of only 4 drivers in NASCAR history to have captured 4 or more titles. Jeff had 4 consecutive wins in the Southern 500 from 1995 to 1998, including the Winston Million in 1997. 5 wins in the Brickyard 400 leads all drivers. Jeff is the Premier Series all-time leader in road course wins with 9, 4 at Watkins Glen and 5 at Sonoma. This 3-time winner of the Daytona 500 was also a short track master. Gordon won 9 times at Martinsville, 5 times at Bristol, twice at Richmond, and the final race held at North Wilkesboro in 1996. 93 total career wins, stands 3rd on the list of NASCAR's all-time winners in the Premier Series. At his retirement, Gordon set NASCAR's Ironman record with 797 consecutive starts, never missing a race from November 1992 through November 2015. Gordon took NASCAR mainstream and continues his influence in the media as an analyst for NASCAR on Fox Broadcasts.
Jeff Gordon, obviously a fan favorite, but now we're actually joined by the executive director and my coworker, Winston Kelley. So I want to pin this on you. What are your thoughts? There's been a lot of talk about, will Jeff Gordon get the 100% vote? And if he does, he'll actually be the first Hall of Famer to get a unanimous vote.
Will he? We'll find out in about 5 or 6 hours. Should he? Absolutely.
So expand on his body of work, and when he came into the series, you know, that first race in 1992, Richard Petty was on his way out. I think a lot of people, you know, they identify with Jeff Gordon, kind of a change of the guard, so to speak, in terms of the new era of NASCAR. What is his legacy from a 30,000-foot view?
I think the success on the track is part of it. 3rd winningest driver in history. Only 3 guys have won more Premier Series title. But as Marty referenced, he was transformational. Not just with the fans, that's a huge part of it, but the car owners looked at things differently. They looked at 19 or 20-year-olds, whether before that it was 28, 30, 32-year-olds. Looked at open-wheel drivers, not just guys that came up through the late model series. So he transformed the sport in so many ways, much like Richard Petty did in the early years. And when somebody has their own era, like the Richard Petty era, the Dale Earnhardt era, and the Jeff Gordon era, that puts them in rare air.
Absolutely, and I mentioned Jeff being a fan favorite. The cool thing about the NASCAR Hall of Fame nominations is the fans actually have a little bit of a voice. Tell us about how the fans have gotten involved in the voting process?
We're the only Hall of Fame that the fan vote actually does matter toward the bottom line. It's on NASCAR.com and NASCARHall.com up until earlier this week. And the top 5 vote getters, that counts as one vote. So you can't have a fan club stuff the ballot, but whoever those top 5 vote getters is really the 60th vote to go with the other 59 people who will either be in the room or if they can't be with us, will have sent in their ballot.
So my question is, you've been in this room for multiple years. How does the attitude in the room change from year to year among the voting members? Because as we know, those rotate somewhat from year to year. And what do you expect the attitude or the spirited debate to be circled around this year?
I don't think the attitude has changed. I think the conversation evolves from year to year based on who's on the ballot. And if you listen to any of the talk radio debates that go on or what you see on Twitter, it's exactly the same. The difference is the fans sometimes can tend to be a little bit more critical, and the debate in the room is more civil. But it is a very spirited debate, and it's more about here's the 2, 3, 4, maybe even all 5 guys that somebody wants to advocate for. They're not necessarily advocating against somebody, but here's who I think should go in this year and why. And most everybody starts their comments with like, okay, we agree they're all 20 deserving, but here's my top 2, 3, whatever.
As the executive director of the Hall of Fame, I imagine picking, favorites is like picking a favorite grandchild. You can't do it. But for you, who are some of the names? Obviously, we've mentioned Jeff Gordon. We've mentioned Davey Allison so far in this show. Who are some other names that stick out to you as possible nominees this year?
Well, I like balance, and that's what we've had every year. Only one year did we have all Premier Series drivers, but they were from different eras. But I like the different eras. I like the balance. Last year may have been the most eclectic that we had. But I think we're going to see at least an owner, whether it's a Jack Roush or whether it's a Roger Penske or even a Joe Gibbs. I think we're going to see that. I think there's going to be a discussion and debate about Davey and Allen, whether they both go in or just one goes in. I think we'll also continue to see the debate about the non-Premier Series drivers, like we had Ron Hornaday Jr. last year. Whether one goes in, I don't know about that, but I think we're going to have all of that and much, much more.
Well, you mentioned those car owners, Roger Penske and Jack Roush. We actually have Jeff Burton up on deck. He's going to talk to us a little bit about his former car owner, Jack Roush. Here's a look at why Jack Roush is qualified to be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Originally pursuing drag racing and sports car racing as an owner and enthusiast, Jack Roush made a history-changing decision when he turned south in 1988 to start a NASCAR team. Since the inception of what is now known as Roush Fenway Racing, the graduate-level mathematician turned engineering entrepreneur has won more than 300 races across NASCAR's 3 national series.
He receives the checkered flag. Mark Martin wins.
The beginning of a lot of these victories. Well, we expect that once we get through the door, we'll just knock it down.
To date, Roush drivers boast 2 championships in the Premier Series, 5 driver championships in the Xfinity Series, and 1 in the Camping World Truck Series.
From the bottom to the top, if a company has competitive goals and they're driven by competitive people, I think they're more likely to succeed.
Roush initially built his powerhouse organization by pairing with legendary driver Mark Martin, who won 83 NASCAR National Series races for Roush from 1988 to 2005. Affectionately known as the Cat in the Hat, Roush has displayed a great ability for discovering and developing talent. He helped Matt Kenseth and Kurt Busch grow into Premier Series champions and also developed the careers of Jeff Burton, Carl Edwards, and Greg Biffle. One of the most visible personalities in the garage on a race weekend, his presence and influence continue to impact the sport in a positive way.
Jack Roush, obviously a championship owner, also made innovations in the sport, specifically in the safety realm, as well as developed a lot of top-tier drivers, including the guy that's sitting beside us, Jeff Burton. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
In my case, he probably didn't meet expectations, but...
But you got your first Cup win driving for Jack. So talk a little bit about what makes Jack maybe one of the more perfect candidates for the Hall of Fame.
Well, I think if you look at stats, he's won the most Premier Series races. I think that's out there for sure, the championships. But I think the development that he did around young people, drivers, crew chiefs, crew members, Jack was a guy that he liked to develop people. He liked to give someone a chance. And I was a perfect example of that. I mean, one day he walked me out in front of the shop. He was mad at me. He walked me out in front of the shop in the yard, and there was a Roush Racing sign out there. And he said, you know, what name's on that sign? And I said, Roush Racing. He said, it doesn't say Jeff Burton Racing, right? But I thought it did because he treated me like it was Jeff Burton Racing. He let me work. He let me do what I wanted to do. And when it worked, he was there to high five me. When it wasn't, he was there to, you know, to give me a little smack and say, okay, you got to fix it. And that's just how he did it. And through that, he brought a tremendous amount of talent into the sport that I don't think most people realize. When you look at how he hired people, he didn't go steal people from other teams. He developed people, and that's pretty unusual in our sport.
So my question for you is about your ballot specifically, and you don't have to, you know, give specific names, but do you find yourself or imagine yourself once you get in that room, you have these 5 names set in stone, and can you be talked into or out of maybe somebody else or someone on your ballot?
Yeah, so my experience has been that the first year I came in with 5 names, and I'm voting for these guys, and then Richard Petty started talking, and someone else started talking, and someone else started talking, and I'm like, never considered that. So I changed my ballot. So now when I go in, there's a couple on my mind today that you can't talk me out of. There's nothing you could tell me that I'm going to change my mind about. But I always leave 2 or 3 for the debate, because there's things I don't know about some of the people on the ballot that older people do know. And so it's really important to listen to those guys because they have a perspective that I think I should listen to before I make that vote. Making that vote is, in my opinion, it's a big responsibility, and you really need to get all the information. And in many cases, that information is not in black and white. It's not on paper. It's not stories that have been written. It's in the experiences that people had and the impact that people had on the sport that really that story's never been told. Once they get elected, or they get in the Hall of Fame, then you can tell that whole story. And I think that's what's really cool about the Hall of Fame process.
Everybody mentions debate. You've said it. We heard Winston Kelley talk to the debate. A lot of people maybe don't realize that we're not just tabulating the number of votes, you know, a legend gets. How heated do those debates get?
There's been a few that have been pretty heated, which I enjoy. Listen, I like a good fight. I think it's fun to argue and debate, and it's always civil. It's always done with respect. But at the same time, different in opinions is what makes, you know, when you put that vote, you should have listened to different opinions. You should have heard people on both sides of the story. And rarely has someone spoken against. It's more that I think this guy should be voted in. It's more of that. And philosophically, you know, it's really interesting because you have guys that didn't race in the Cup Series, right? So where do they fit in? You have car owners. And I'll tell you, I'm a huge advocate for car owners because I think that car owners, without them, there is no sport. And successful car owners are still doing their business. They're still doing their trade. I don't think we should wait for a car owner to no longer be a car owner when we elect them in the Hall of Fame, because we need successful car owners, and if they're successful, they're still rolling with their business. So I'm a huge advocate for car owners.
One last question for you. When I think about you, you know, obviously being a Cup driver, transitioning to the booth, somebody on the ballot that comes to mind is Buddy Baker. Have you given much thought to him and not necessarily that drivers that go out and win a ton and win a lot of championships, but guys who give past, you know, coming out of the car? I
think that the contribution to the community should matter. I think that what someone did in the seat behind the wheel should matter. I think that what they did out of the seat should matter. So if you give me 2 drivers and one of those, if I look at stats and I look at wins and top fives and all those things, and I see one guy that stuck around and contributed to the sport and tried to make the sport better, he's going to get my vote before the other guy. It doesn't mean the other guy doesn't deserve it. It's just I think that overall contribution matters because this really is a community. And the health of our sport is important for the fan base, for the sponsors, for everybody. And so people that have been willing to contribute, I think, deserve a second look.
All right, that's been Jeff Burton. We're going to take a look at Roger Penske. Speaking of a legendary car owner in our sport, have a look at Roger Penske in his Hall of Fame video.
He's known simply as the captain, a true captain of industry. Roger Penske has steered one of the most successful motorsports ships in the sport's history. Penske celebrated his 50th anniversary in racing in 2016. It's a journey that began as a young spectator at the Indianapolis 500 and grew into a career that earned success in many forms of racing and business.
Car owner and team manager Roger Penske accepting a congratulations. It's been a great day for him.
Team Penske has won over 100 races in NASCAR's Premier Series, and in 2012 won the championship with driver Brad Keselowski.
And the checkered flag at a NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship for Penske Racing.
Penske has also multiple Daytona 500 wins, with Ryan Newman in 2008 and Joey Logano in 2015. And from 2013 to 15, Penske tied a record with 3 consecutive owner championships in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Penske likewise left an indelible mark off the track. He built the 2-mile Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California in 1996, and previously owned Michigan International Speedway, Nazareth Speedway, and North Carolina Speedway. Respected like few others, Roger Penske is revered throughout the motorsports industry as a leader and competitor.
Welcome back. We have Zack Albert with us. Zack Albert, of course, from NASCAR.com. And your first time on the voting panel, you have a grin on your face. I imagine you're super excited about that, loving the history of the sport. But is it nerve-wracking, suiting up necessarily to go into a room full of legends to vote on this year's class?
And what have you done, too? Because you walked in with a big notebook, I saw.
Yes. So I've done some definite research, and I didn't want to rely on just, my conventional knowledge of the sport and just the things that, I kind of grew up with. Definitely wanted to take a deep dive on a lot of these names and pull out some information, but huge honor, and just looking forward to seeing what the debates are going to be like and what the discussions will be, and kind of going in with definitely a couple at least that I have pretty dead set on that'll be on my ballot, but certainly going in with an open mind on the rest.
We just saw a video about Roger Penske, obviously a championship owner, 100 wins and counting in the Cup Series, but he has influence in all of motorsports. Do you think that broader influence is going to influence the voting panel, even though this is the NASCAR Hall of Fame?
Yeah, and that's tough, and that's another thing you look at, and I don't know if it's fair or not to consider him as he's an IndyCar guy or things like that. There's a much broader reach, just beyond beyond NASCAR, IndyCar, all forms of motorsports, and the speedway ownership factor too. I mean, he has given so much to so many different, motorsports, bringing the Super Bowl to Detroit. There have been a lot of things that he's had his hand in. So his candidacy, I think, is well worthy. It is just a really tough field of car owners, and making those choices is going to be, I think, one of the hardest things that's going to be on this ballot.
So I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball. You don't have to tell us who's on your ballot, but maybe give us a name who's in consideration, and give us your best argument for why you think they should be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
So it's interesting. Jeff Gordon, I believe, is, as we've discussed, slam dunk. I don't think that there's very few drivers that transcend motorsports, and so I imagine that discussion to be fairly short. I would think. I think we could go on and on about his praises, but if you go down the list, I'm like I said, those last 2 or 3 spots, I'm leaving an open mind on. But I've got Buddy Baker near the top of that list. Alan Kulwicki certainly in consideration as well. Several others I'm leaving an open mind to. Mike Stefanik is one of those. Harry Hyde, looking at some of the crew chiefs and things like that. Winston mentioned about trying to get a balanced class, and I think so. As much as there are many worthy drivers, I think it's important to kind of look at many other facets of and what people have contributed to the sport.
A balanced class, obviously, will nominate 5 additional to join the 45 we already have, but there's 20 on the ballot. So is that something that you're trying to actually accomplish, is I want my ballot to be diverse in who's represented?
Absolutely. I think there are compelling arguments to be made for many drivers, but you don't want to be short-sighted at all in terms of what people did that didn't necessarily get behind the wheel. Things like a Waddell Wilson, Harry Hyde, plenty of big names that didn't necessarily have their name above the door, but did plenty in their own right, from the pit box, the garage, all of those areas.
So my question, because me and you are very much cut from the same cloth in terms of the history of this sport, is kind of what got us into it. How do you keep your composure in a room with Junior Johnson, Richard Petty, and just other legends of the sport who will be in there voting?
It is a big pinch me moment for sure. I think the biggest thing is just going in with an open mind and trying to be a good listener. I probably will not be the most vocal person in the room to just try to know my place and things like that, but definitely going to listen to a lot of what people have to say. And it's rarefied air definitely with a lot of the people that are in that room.
Will you be taking notes?
Absolutely.
As they talk?
Absolutely. Definitely. Coming in with some notes, but absolutely reference and make some notes along the way.
All right, well, that's been Zack Albert. He's got his binder ready. Kim, we appreciate you co-hosting today. Zach, we appreciate you joining. Thanks to all of our guests who are on the show today. That's going to do it. Remember to tune back into NASCAR.com. Also on our YouTube page, 5:30 is when the 2019 NASCAR Hall of Fame class will be announced, so make sure you check that out. You're not going to want to miss that to see which 5 drivers, car owners, or anyone involved with the sport on that ballot.
Jacket.
Yeah, gets that invitation to have that blue jacket placed on them later this year. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.